Fortunate enough to have him again today, and I want to introduce to you now Scott Lynch. He done a powerful sermon the last time he was here. I had a lot of good comments about it, and I told him so. So keep up the good work. Preach the word, brother.
All right. Thank you. All right, can you hear me? Okay, so if you want to turn in your Bibles over to the book of Daniel, we'll be in the book of Daniel in chapter 1. But I want to kind of start out the class a little bit differently. I'm going to read a little story about, he's currently a pastor now, and he's written several books, but this story comes from his early years in college when he was going to college for the first time, and I'll just read this story and we'll get started. It says, one of the clearest challenges to my faith happened when I was a student at Louisiana State University. Let me first say that the college experience by its very nature is one big test if you're trying to follow Jesus. Suddenly, as a young adult, you have all this juicy freedom you've never had before. You can stay out all night, sleep all day, skip classes you don't like, eat what you want, when you want, go to endless parties, drink, smoke, even dance. So just being on a huge university campus like LSU challenged my faith as a young man. But one incident stands out to me. I had gotten a job at the LSU Law School, working in the maintenance department to make money for my living expenses. Most of the crew members were good old boys, proud rednecks who like to smoke, drink, cuss, and make jokes about quiet Christian boys like me. I was so fervent about my faith that I decided to bring my Bible to work and read it at lunch and during breaks. The other guys just laughed and trash talked about me. One day, one of their buddies from the campus police force dropped by. He happened to be from the Middle East, a big burly guy named Mohammed. Mohammed stopped in and saw me read my Bible over in the corner. He then joined in on the jokes the other guys were saying at first, but then he came over and said, "You don't really believe the stuff in that book, do you?" I looked up at him and said, "Yes, I do. I believe it's God's word. I really do." He said, "No, you don't," Mohammed scoffed. "Now when push comes to shove, you don't." "I'm afraid you're wrong," I said. "I really do believe every word in the Bible. I'm a follower of Jesus, and this helps me live my life." "Really?" he taunted. Oh,
Batteries.
I'll just speak up louder. How about that? "Really?" he taunted. "You'd still believe it was true no matter what happened to you?" "Yes, absolutely," I said. Smack! The instant Mohammed backhanded me so hard I flew off my stool and landed to the floor. My jaw felt like it had run into a brick wall. "Hey, what was that for?" I said, getting up. Mohammed picked up my Bible and pointed a finger at me. "If you really believe everything this book says, then you must turn the other cheek." I just looked at him, and time seemed to stand still. Part of me wanted to get out of there. I mean, getting smacked around wasn't exactly in my job description. I didn't get paid nearly enough for this kind of abuse. Part of me wanted to laugh and tell Mohammed to back off. He clearly enjoyed being a bully. There we go. Thank you. And there was probably no way I could win here. But the rest of me knew that this was a test, an opportunity to stand up for Jesus in the face of adversity. So I looked Mohammed in the eye and slowly turned my face to present the other cheek to him. "Go ahead," I said. "No, you don't mean it." "Yes, go ahead. Here's my other cheek." Crack! Another set of knuckles to my face, and I saw stars as I stumbled backward. I stood up and picked up my Bible, which he had dropped. I sat back down on the stool and started reading it, trying to ignore the blistering ache of my forehead. Mohammed stared at me. and then took off his cap. His entire demeanor had changed. Somehow I had won his respect. "You're the first real Christian I have ever met," he said. "Tell me what you believe and why you believe it." That encounter became the beginning of a friendship that lasted through the rest of my time at LSU. Mohammed would come by during breaks or after shifts and ask me to tell him about my faith, about Jesus, about what it meant to be a Christian willing to turn the other cheek. So I wanted to start off with that story because in Daniel, he was also going through some tests. And we go through tests every day. Becoming a Christian doesn't all of a sudden mean that we have an easy life, does it? Can anyone here tell me that when they became a Christian, life just became a bed of roses? Does anyone here have any trials and tribulations that they have also gone through in their life? Or is it just me? Okay. Let me get this put on and then I'll... There we go. So generally, what do you find comes out of trials and tribulations that you're going through, especially when it comes to your faith? Growth?
A better prayer life.
A better prayer life? If you're like me, sometimes I'm praying for those trials and tribulations to be taken away. But what else comes from it?
He's got really good weight time, y'all. He's got good weight.
Yeah, sometimes you're just doing something as an example for someone else, and it allows them to grow in their faith. That's a good point. Generally, and we find that one of God's promises is that if we hold fast to our faith, that we grow, that we not only show others, but we get stronger in our faith. And it's generally 10 times better on the other end. So go over to Daniel, and this is, I'm just kind of picking up from where I left off last time, and if we don't remember where we left off last time, that is perfectly okay. In Daniel chapter 1, verse 15 through 19, this is shortly after Daniel had asked his supervisor, essentially, after being captured by the king of another nation, to not be fed the king's choice food, and to, instead, not to drink the wine, not to eat the food, but to eat vegetables and drink water, and asked him to test if he would be better than the others that were in captivity. So in Daniel chapter 1, we're going to go to verse 15. It says, "At the end of the 10 days, their appearance seemed better, and they were fatter than all the youths who had been eating and drinking the king's choice food. So the overseer continued to withhold the choice food and the wine they were to drink, and kept giving them vegetables. As for these youths, God gave them the knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature and wisdom. Daniel even understood all kinds of visions and dreams. Then at the end of the days which the king had specified for presenting them, the commander of the officials presented them before the king. And the king talked with them, and out of them, then the king talked with them, and out of them all, not one was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's personal service. So what was the result of the trials that they had to go through? Yeah, God blessed them through those trials. Not necessarily right at the end, but while they were going through those trials, God blessed them. And then what happened? Yep, they were blessed in their worldly life, but even at the end, when they were all presented, the king chose them to enter his personal service. So, during those trials, they were blessed. They were given knowledge and wisdom. And it even says Daniel was given an extra blessing of being able to interpret dreams and visions. And then after those trials, they continued to hold fast to their beliefs. And then they were blessed again to enter into the king's service. Has anyone here gone through trials that didn't seem like they were a good thing in the beginning and then found blessings at the end? I know I have. So what are some of the, are there any trials that someone is willing to share, not necessarily specifics, but just a general trial and something that they learned from it in their own personal life? I know I'm asking you to share, yes. That can be scary.
One of the things that we did with our kids was we told them, if you want to play any extra sports, it's fine, but we're not playing on Sundays. And it was pretty easy locally, but then whenever they joined the area team, we told the coaches then, we're not playing on Sundays. And so don't ask. And they're like, okay, well that's fine. And then, after a little bit, they're like, oh, we got this game on Sunday, we need y'all to be there. And we're like, oh, told y'all we wouldn't be there on Sunday. He said, for the world, it's like, why in the world are you not coming to the game? This is important for them to get to the playoffs. And
yeah, they need to be part of the team. They need to show up.
And it's like, nope, boy comes first, and Sundays are for him. So, and then, through it, they, kind of got a little ridiculed, and they did also, but it helps them to gain that respect for Sunday. Their life gets, chances of them going on a pro and something from T-ball to up is pretty small.
Yeah, and it seems like a very small thing, especially if somebody does not understand. You're like, well, it's just one day, Can't you just, it's an afternoon game. That's where they start asking you to make those compromises, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an afternoon game. Can't you just go to church and come make the game?
Or we'll get together and have a church there.
Yeah. We'll put together a quick church service so you guys can come. But holding to your beliefs is very important. And how did the kids do from that?
I think it helped them get stronger and closer to the Lord.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share?
Well, and it can be as simple as, when someone starts taking the Lord's name in vain, they were saying, okay, you can't do it. And it's just, it seeps into your culture today, little things in this world, and by doing that, then people respect you more, and
Financial trials? Yeah, absolutely. I think that can affect anyone, no matter what stage of life they're in. Financial trials they're rated as the #1 cause of divorces. They're rated as sometimes the #2 or 3 cause of depression. It's tough.
In situations where there's absolutely nothing you can do about it, it helps you grow in trust.
That's probably the situation that forces you to realize you have no control. There's nothing you can do. But what about the situations that we have a little bit of control about? Do we still trust? I find those to be even harder. Because it's like, well, if I do this, then this will happen. Yeah, I know I'm praying for this to happen, but I can control it still. It takes a lot of self-control, and it takes a lot of growth in your faith to realize it doesn't matter. If you have faith in God, you're trusting Him with the outcome, not yourself. And that's kind of what Daniel was doing here. Has there been any trials in your personal growth with Jesus? Things that He's asked you to do that you just weren't sure you were equipped to do?
Teaching is one of them that none of us really think we're equipped to do. But, we've got a whole family here that helps and opportunities. And then, we've got the Word of God to lead us as well.
So like teaching a class?
Teaching class, yeah. Because, right now we're new teachers, and there's so many of us that are maybe thinking, hey, I'm not qualified.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity that we can grow in ourselves just by reading the material. And we don't have to be an expert at it. We just have to be available. And then we've got so many of our kiddos that are ready to learn.
Yeah. And have you ever been in a workplace where you've dealt with somebody that knows the answer to every question, or seems to know the answer to every question? Every time there's a question, he or she, they already know the answer, and they tell you the answer. And it's not always that they know the answer, it's just they're answering. I found that in situations like that, the person that's willing to let you know, I don't have the answer, but I'll find it for you, builds more trust and faith in that relationship than when they just try to answer it. So teaching is a big one. I am not a teacher. And I know it's contrary to what I'm doing right now, but I'm telling you, I'm not a natural born teacher. I said a prayer, and sometimes I laugh because if you're willing to pray for it, you better be willing for the answer. So I asked God if there was any way that I could grow my faith. And we have a preacher at One Hope who doesn't ask in the traditional sense. It's more of being voluntold. And so I was voluntold that I was going to be teaching a sermon on a Sunday morning. And that is not what I wanted to do. And I immediately went to, I'm not a teacher, I don't speak well, I don't know this as well as he does. But isn't there somebody in the Bible that said the same thing? Does anybody remember who that was? Moses. God asked him to go to Egypt. He said, well, hold on. I'm not the best man for the job. And what did he start doing? He started giving excuses. Until the last excuse was, I'm not eloquent, I'm not a speaker. He said, well, then I'm sending Aaron with you, but you're going. And that's, ironically enough, that was the very next lesson after I was about to tell the preacher, nope, I'm not doing this. Whether he did that on purpose or on accident, I don't know. But it was a great lesson, and you don't have to be, like you said, you don't have to be the best person to teach. You just have to be willing. Because you're not doing it by yourself. You have a whole church family. There's other people that you can go to, which I have gone to, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, speaking about, and gotten help. I don't have to do it alone. But that's the beauty of doing anything, right? Anything that you do, when you first start doing it, are you always going to be the best at it? Even your faith. When you were a new Christian compared to right now, I can look back and just laugh at the questions that I was asking. My faith was in its infancy. I don't ask the same questions that I asked when I was a new Christian. But also, what's something that we continually tell everyone that as a Christian you're asked to do, no matter what? Not necessarily teach a class, but maybe just teach one person. And we get that from going back to the Great Commission by teaching everyone about Jesus Christ. That's not easy either. I'm not an eloquent speaker. I don't go and just naturally find a good way to have that conversation or quote unquote break the ice. But do we really have to do it the right way? Is there a right way?
I said the right way is just to do it.
Yeah. But you know what? I was one of those Christians. It scared me to death. Because I didn't have the answers. But are you supposed to have all the answers? It's kind of a trick question. No, you're not supposed to have the answers off the top of your head, but you have all the answers, right? And if they're willing to listen to you speak about Jesus, all you have to do is be willing to sit down and just show them, here's what the truth says. One of the, I lost my spot. One of the beauties that I love about the book of Daniel is even though they were going through trials and tribulations and they were being blessed within those trials and they were being blessed at the end of some of those trials, I think the best way I could relate it to today is if we were put in a position where we had no choice and the President of the United States just grabbed a bunch of people to try and learn a bunch of different things. And then he winds up choosing this select group to enter in and be his personal advisors. But in Daniel's situation, he didn't have the freedoms that we have, so I don't have anything that can compare to that. We don't have captivity in the United States in the same sense. But even though he was in the king's service and he was being blessed by God, he was still a captive, right? He was still a slave. He was still outside of his own country. So even though he was being blessed through some of these trials and tribulations, he was still in a position where I would not want to be. Not a fun position. Because we know the story continues with his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And we know later on that they made the king mad. And they went through more trials and tribulations. And so, when we're going through our own trials and tribulations and we have these small victories and these blessings, I mean, is that really the end of it?
There's always another time.
Yeah, there's always going to be another trial. But when you see the light at the end of the tunnel and you see what God is doing in your life, in that trial that you're going through, how do you feel? Hopeful? Sometimes triumphant? I know I do. And then when you go into that next trial, how do you feel?
Stress.
Stress? Yeah.
I think one of the things that we can't see through the trials we go through is that dependence, if we look back and see our dependence on the Lord and His ability to help us through, then that can strengthen us. And I think it also can help strengthen others. If we've gone through trial, then that gives us an opportunity to help someone else who's going through a similar trial.
Yeah. And even as a church family, aren't you going through a small trial? You're looking for a preacher right now. That can't be easy. Can't be fun all the time. But I did notice on one of the slides before I got up here, it looked like you guys had a mission statement. Does anybody know what that mission statement was? I can't remember off the top of my head. I just read it briefly. Be a servant-hearted congregation, and then there was something to do with showing love to others and bringing all to Christ. Anchored in love, yeah, pretty close. But when you have the mission statement in mind when you're going through the trials, it makes it easier, doesn't it? Yeah, it kind of anchors you and it kind of makes some of the decisions for you. You know, there's other religions that don't have the same outlook on showing love to get to the same point in bringing others into their religion. And so it kind of makes those decisions for them. And one of the things that we as Christians believe is showing love. I mean, Jesus says it in Matthew chapter 22, 37 through 40. He was being asked, what's the greatest commandment? And he said, to love your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. But the second is just as great, to love your neighbor as yourself. And who's your neighbor? Is your neighbor just next door at the next address over? Yeah. But who else? I saw you mouth it. Everyone? Everyone. Exactly.
I like who is my neighbor? Like, well, let me tell you the story.
Yep. And he wanted to emphasize that it's to everyone. So that's kind of what I want to encourage West Side. As soon as I saw that, man, I thought that was awesome. When you have that mission statement, you can start putting that mission statement before the congregation so that the congregation knows exactly where you're headed, no matter what the decision comes up. It's really easy. You just match up that decision and where you think you want to go as a congregation to that mission statement. And it makes that decision much, much easier when you're anchored to a goal. Daniel was anchored to a goal and he was anchored to his faith. And so it made the decision super easy for Daniel. And because it made the decision easier for him, God blessed him in that. So I feel like West Side, I almost said One Hope. West Side, by being anchored to that mission statement, it's going to make these decisions much easier. And you're going to be able to grow this church. My lessons, I promise you, they get much, much shorter when there's less feedback. I have a lot of questions and not a lot of preaching during the lessons. So, is there any other comments? Or thoughts? All right. Well, I appreciate you guys having me out. And I look forward to worshiping with you.
So after class, stop screening here because the class is and then we get, this is